Okay, folks, some good news. I finally found my good camera. Haven't found the microphones yet, but I did find my good camera. So, for those of you who've seen the inside of this barn before, we had my grandson and son-in-law here for a week, and almost all the furniture has been removed. Not quite all of it. My tools are still a piled up mess in the middle of the barn. And we have our washing machines over here. Oh, something new. And I encourage anybody to correct me if they figure out I'm wrong. The newest addition is right here. It is complete. I have not even tried to run it yet. The power cord is just chewed on it. I believe it to be a Dexter product. Now, there is no name on it anywhere other than the motor has AC Delco on it, which doesn't mean anything. Picked this up in Gillette here a week, 10 days ago. And it's complete in every way. I've got the lid for it. I'm going to have to put a new cord on it. That'll be obviously the subject of one of my many future videos in this mess. So, but what I'm going to do for you today, we're just going to walk around here a little bit and maybe we can see some of the stuff. I don't know if the bone meal grinder has ever made it in a video. That's a fairly rare piece of equipment. You don't see too many of them anymore. I forget who built it. It's on the flywheel here, or on the wheel. Yeah, we'll do it later. I'd have to move a bunch of stuff to get it out of there. You see the lathe and the milling machine, which were the subject of an earlier video. But then my grandson will be back here for 2 months. Well, for 6 weeks, 7 weeks next week. This mess up here is almost all my wife's. There is a little bit up there that's mine, but I would say 95 to 96% of it's probably my wife's. So we're making headway on the barn, getting it cleaned out. It'll take some more time. But anyway, back to the business at hand. So, this has been the subject of a couple of previous videos. It is a Fuller & Johnson 2.5 horsepower vertical engine. Very rare engine today. The amount of them remaining, somewhere between 3 and 5. I know for sure of 2 others. There may be more. I'm going to get my light lit up here in a few minutes. That light actually requires a USB converter, which I don't have down here, so I got to run up to the house and get one. But anyway, we are 2 weeks, we are 3 weeks from the Baraboo, Wisconsin show, and then the week after that is the Portland, Indiana show as this is being filmed. I grew up 45 minutes from the Portland, Indiana show. So it's my goal to get this thing back running again and take this with me to Portland. Now I also have to pick up 2 more engines in Green Bay that I have purchased last summer. I've owned them for about a year, but it's going to take me until next month to get them home. So I'm going to get the light set up, get a tripod set up, which I actually found a couple of my tripods too. And again, I apologize for the audio. I know it's not the greatest on this camera, but we'll get this thing fired up, and I'm going to show you how to wire the coil and the battery and the igniter. And well, I'll show you this right now. So This is the igniter right here. You can see the hot wire, you see the nylon insulator right there. We got the red wire hooked to hot, and the black wire's down here on this ground screw on the igniter right here. The other thing we did, I had replaced these springs previously, and the spring stretched out, and my igniter trip wouldn't return. So there's a common spring manufacturer out there. A lot of people use them. I hate bad-mouthing anybody on this site, but I wanted an unfinished spring. You know, these weren't built with zinc-plated or stainless springs back in the day, so I wanted a black spring. The closest I could get from this company, they wanted, with shipping, $50 for one spring. Amazon had an assortment of springs for $23. So I went with that, found one in the Amazon box. I still have to cut it off and rebend it. But if you hook it on right here, it returns it every time. So I've got that working. Let me get everything set up. I'll bring you back and we'll go ahead and wire the electrical in on this and see if we can get it running. Okay. So it appears that I've got this set up. I'm hoping as I find more of my stuff, the video quality can be quite a bit improved. So anyway, when you wire up an igniter-fired engine, it requires at least 2 components, and the way I do it requires 3. Assuming I can't stop dropping them. So you have your coil, 12-volt battery. I use computer batteries, and I use knife switches. That way, to kill it, you just simply open the circuit. There's no power. So the trick here on this one is you have to bring these wires down so they're not rubbing on anything moving. We've got the fuel pump plunger here. So what we're going to do, you can see here I already tried doing a little Mickey Mouse wiring on it. But we're going to pull that over that way. That should keep it away from any moving components. And then normally I would solder these terminals. I have no idea where my soldering tools are. So we're going to go with simply crimping them for now. Again, we got to leave here I've only got one more weekend before we have to leave. So I want to make sure I can get this thing running. If I can't get it running, I'm not going to take it with me. And I don't know what I was thinking there. I wasn't, because I have to wire the positive to the knife switch. So do the negative here real quick. And I don't particularly care for the crimpers on that particular set of strippers. Normally I would use my big lineman's pliers, but they're missing in action, so once I find my soldering stuff, I'll come back and solder this. Okay, so our negative is connected. And let's go ahead and separate this some more. There we go. Oh, great. I left the door open and so we could have more light, and here come the barn swallows trying to build nests. Okay, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use this. This is a little large. I've got to match both the ring and the wire size. Okay. I will screw these down once I have it running. Right now I'm just loose mounting everything. Okay. And last but not least, you always want your wires to be just about the right length. Maybe just a touch extra so they're not in a bind. If you get too much, then they coil up and you have other problems. I purchased this coil off of, where did I get this coil? I think this one came off eBay. Again, I can't find my regular crimpers. This is just, I would hope to be farther along than we are, but with the show coming up in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on which show you're talking about, I got to get this at least running. If I can't get it running, I'm not going to take it. And I do have a couple of the old porcelain knife switches around here somewhere, but again, don't know where they are, so I'm using these plastic ones. They're not correct, but they work as far as historically. So next thing we got to do is we got to connect up that spring in the front. Okay. Put some fuel in it. I've mentioned this before, but I try to only use ethanol free in my old engines and old washing machines. A little hard to do here sometimes. The nearest place that sells it is a 100-mile round trip. Everything you got to do is fill this very slowly. That should be enough. Okay, so this is a fuel pump. Got to keep pumping it until you get fuel up here to the top. There we go. Got fuel at the carb. And I'm going to have to step in front of the camera, and I'm sorry. It doesn't act like it's trying to fire. Might have flooded it when I pumped it. Let's see what we get now. We're not getting anything, so next is make sure that all electrical's good. So we'll kill the electrical up to the igniter for a second. So what I'm doing now is pulling the igniter where I check it for spark. Okay, so now we turn this back on. And I hope you can see this. So we have spark, so that's not our problem. And we do have fuel in the combustion chamber. Okay, so there wasn't much up there. That pump just don't act like it's pumping real well. I had to rebuild it when I first got the engine. I'm going to shut you down and pull that. That takes some time. I'll be back with you. Okay, folks. I didn't do the basics. See if I can climb out of here. This engine had sat for 2 years. Actually sat for 2.5 years without running. First thing you should always do, make sure your valves are free. So you can't see the exhaust valve, but the intake valve's right here. That was stuck bigger than life. So the engine couldn't fire, couldn't suck any air in with the fuel. Fuel pump wasn't the problem at all. So I got it running. As soon as I freed that up, took 4 spins, the camera had died, and I'm sorry about that. But I got it running. Didn't take long once I got the wiring done right. So I'll come in here and put some screws in it, mount everything good and solid, and it's ready to go to the shows. And I'll let it run for a little while here just to make sure nothing comes up. Burned a little rich. We'll turn the fuel down just a skosh. Music to my ears, because I haven't fired a hit and miss engine off in, like I said, 2.5 years. The last one I had running was this one. fuel. There we go. And this engine will run literally hours with no water in it for coolant because there's no load on it, so this thing's just putting right along. I'm sorry I didn't get it videoed firing it up. I could here, let's kill it for you. Okay, so this one I do have to stand behind it, which is where I have the camera set. I'm sorry about that. Now, it had flooded itself. The problem with opening it up like that and leaving the fuel on is it'll flood itself. This engine, I've done it enough that I know I can get away with it. A couple of spins, it'll start right off again. So this engine dates from either 1909 or 1910. Fuller Johnson, the estimates are they made about 1,000 of the verticals in 1 horsepower and 2.5 horsepower size. It was kind of a Mickey Mouse affair, so they didn't get a lot of them done, even by the standards of the day. This was a heavy engine. This engine weighs 770 pounds, not counting the cartons on it. So, what's the word I'm looking for? I've got a little bit of a exhaust leak over here. So they not a lot of these survived. You know, the scrap drives in World War II took out a lot of these old engines. They were pretty much obsolete by the time World War II came around. So, unfortunately, most of these end up in the scrap heap. And the engines that were less useful, more of them ended up. So, that unfortunately is this one. So, hey, first old iron video in the new shop. We're going to go ahead and shut her down and tighten that nut down. And we'll do some video when we get to Baraboo and Portland.